Thank you very much. Could I just bring in the audience now and for a quick vote? So, who of you is reform? So, that would be about a fourth. And then who would be overhaul? So it's almost the opposite of the table.
They were reformists till I spoke.
Probably relates to the age, maybe.
What's the difference? Because if you're reform, you're overhauling. Isn't it semantics?
I would say that
The question is too vague. The chap's absolutely right. I don't understand the difference between it, so I can't vote.
Good, yeah.
That's why I said refine.
You just academics. But I mean, the point is, I would say that reform would be stay within the fundamental premise of the system, whereas overall would be to completely reinvent that system.
I think you need to retake the vote.
Retake the vote.
Retake the vote. Could I, before I will let you respond to one another, could I just ask two quick questions from Paddy Ireland and from Mr. Mayor? What in your mind would be the greatest risk of reform, and what would be in your mind the greatest risk of overhaul?
I said earlier that I thought that we have a major cultural problem as well, and the German political economist Wolfgang Streeck recently described it, I think, rather well. And he was writing in part about corporations and finance in Germany in a book which was looking at the demise of social democracy in Germany. And Streeck is an institutionalist, so he would be centre-left. And I think one of the things that Streeck realised in the research that he did for the book was that the depth of the cultural problem that we have. And it led him to very, very gloomy conclusions. And I didn't have time to mention that this is his description of the culture that has emerged. He says, it's a culture which lacks any normative attachment to social solidarity. Restraints on the pursuit of individual interests have greatly weakened. It's a culture in which the deliberate outwitting of social rules is approved and is indeed prestigious behaviour. A culture in which people are always looking for ways of converting social arrangements into opportunities for profit. We have and that Streeck's point is that this cultural problem is a product of existing institutional arrangements. And so I don't think it's a matter of tweaking. I think it is a much deeper problem than that.
My argument for reform and concern about overhaul is the best is the enemy of the good, and that there is a real risk that in pursuit of the best we essentially achieve an outcome that is far worse than what we have at present, and that what already exists, as I described in terms of the diversity within Europe, really offers virtually any menu that you can think of in terms of governance and ownership arrangements. And if one pursues a notion that is a principle that the European Commission is interested in but has not yet adequately implemented, of allowing freedom of incorporation across Europe and reincorporation, one can basically exploit what already exists to tremendous advantage. So there is a real danger in terms of trying to undermine a system that could deliver a great deal from what exists at present.
Just make one point. I mean, the problem, it seems to me, is that you can point to institutions which work in much better ways, but that is not the model that is being promoted either within Europe or around the rest of the world. The model that is being promoted is very much a stock market driven shareholder value model. That is what they are trying to promote in the developing world. That is what they're trying to achieve in Europe. And we have a kind of major a serious battle of ideas needs to take place before policymakers will even consider promoting the kind of organisations that Colin Mayer is describing.
Well, I'm still not quite clear what you're actually promoting in terms of a new structure, because whatever its faults are, with a shareholder value proposition, there is a clear discipline in place that you actually, as the corporation, will address one constituent's needs, but in order to do that, will take into account, as directors' duties suggest in UK company law, a whole range of other interests to maximise that particular value proposition. So there is a discipline instilled in that system, but by opening it up and allowing for different interest groups to perhaps put their cases across, and for then directors to get perhaps slightly confused as to whom they actually owe their duties, surely that creates a bit of a muddle in the system.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the argument that you can't have any version of stakeholding because people can't balance different goals. I mean, I really don't buy that. You know, people have to do that in all institutions. In every walk of life, people are having to balance different goals. What I think is that there is indeed a discipline. Managers are increasingly subject to financial market imperatives. Those financial market imperatives are leading them in extremely socially undesirable directions. And one of the interesting things about proposals such as only giving voting rights to shareholders that have held their shares for 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, the very purpose of that proposal is to relieve managers of those financial market imperatives. It is intended to weaken those imperatives in order that they can run the corporation in a more sensible and productive way. So I'm not offering a blueprint, but I can pick out certain trajectories, and one of which would indeed be to reduce those financial market imperatives, those short-term financial market imperatives to which corporate managers are currently subjected.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Paddy that the point that the fact that you have to sort of balance or sort of the different constituency, different stakeholders and so on is not something that is hard to ask from directors, but it's actually something that the good directors or good board of directors are doing anyway. Yeah. I remember sort of reading an interview with the CEO of BP, and it was many years ago, and he was saying, well, this is what I have to do as a good CEO, because in order to deliver good profits and so on, I have to be like a statesman. I have to consider the various sort of things, but I have to think about local communities. Yeah. I have to think about the environment. I have to do other things, and I have to sort of chuck all of this together. So the fact that it's not possible is that it exists. It exists. The problem I have,
not with Paddy's.
Yeah. So no. But so your case is that at the moment that we have sort of a certain thing. I mean, I think it's an illusion that we have what is enlightened shareholder value, that directors have to deal with other things. And we sort of ended up with a model which is a compromise, which doesn't say a lot, which apart from enshrining or sort of entrenching actually shareholder supremacy, because it provides almost sort of, if you wish, defense for directors, because what is having regard to means, apart from saying that, and I talk to practitioners who advise directors, and they all tell me, this is the best thing in the world, because what I tell directors to do, can you just make sure that in the notes you've considered all these issues, but at the end of the day, when it bites, when the real issue is that you have to deliver for the company as a whole, which means to shareholders. So when there's a takeover position or takeover situation, and you balance the idea that it will provide profits or enhance shareholder value with the fact that employees would lose their jobs, you would choose the first, not the latter. That's it. So when it bites, when it matters, shareholder supremacy wins. So this is why I disagree that this is already somewhere there. So that's the second point. And the sort of last point, which is that about, you reminded me something, because you talked about the idea that the cultural thing, and you quoted, which is very interesting, about the moral issue and the sort of the crisis and so on. Just this Monday, I was in Parliament, and there was debate about how do we get out of this mess. That was the title. And the Archbishop of Canterbury, if I can say, what he said is that when he looked at the banking system, when he talked about it, he says, he worked in the past and he was in an NHS trust. And he says doctors, when they work, they correct each other. They work together. They work for the benefit of the patient. And so they're not looking for mistakes. They're looking to correct the system, to work together, and so on. He says nothing of this exists in banking system, for example. It's all about, you know, the idea that we have to deliver profits. It's a competition, and so on and so forth. So he's talking about values. Talking about values, whether you agree or not, about real values of trust, of confidence, of collaboration, and so on and so forth. And this is why, and this is why I agree with you, it's a long haul. It's a long...
First time ever.
Yes. Yes. It's a long shot. That's what I mean, in that sort of sense.